right, to this now. So 2024 has been seen a sharp spike in consumer scammers. Unsuspecting elderly people have, of course, really carried the worst of it. Now to help us look ahead as to what 2025 looks like for consumers and also tips on how to avoid falling prey. I am joined by News 24 consumer journalist Wendy Knowler. Wendy, a good evening to you and a happy new year.
And to you, Naledi, good to be with you.
No, so good to have you with us. I actually want to, you've written a piece about it, and I thought what was quite interesting is that when you start the piece, you actually talk about because of, AI, and my goodness, I mean, things developing so fast in the world of tech, it's really hard to even keep up. But because of that, the past 2 years has seen quite the spike in, I suppose, the resources that online criminals have.
Indeed, it's worrying because the AI technology is getting better and better. So right now, if you're a little bit tech-sussed, you will be able to pick up that, what looks like, as opposed to look like Elon Musk giving, wonderful advice and, I'm just letting this slip kind of thing. Yeah. I think the clip was actually with a TV interview. You can see it's a little bit off, and common sense will tell you, why is he doing this SABC interview? Why haven't you seen more of it, kind of thing. But for some people that aren't all that tech savvy, they even as crude as it can be seen to be at the moment, they will fall for it. And that's the problem. I had one terrible case of an elderly couple in their 80s that fell for that clip they saw on Facebook, how to get rich with Bitcoin. And what it led to was, okay, we're just going to set up your Bitcoin account, all right. And what they did was trick them into creating installing AnyDesk, which allowed them to actually take control of the laptop and then as well as their phone, got into their bank accounts and cleaned them out. They're in the process of now having to sell their house. But these the technology is going to actually get slicker and slicker. And so what we need as consumers to do is to apply common sense. So yes, it might look and sound like whoever giving this wonderful advice, these wonderful get rich quick insights, but would they be doing it? Why would we be doing it? Let's maybe check on traditional media, see what's been written about it. So it requires all of us to just dig a bit deeper than what's on the surface, as authentic as it might appear to be.
Yeah, I remember I've appeared in one of those clips myself. And
I'm sure. Horrifying.
They had me AI'd with an American accent talking to Elon Musk. I think it was obviously a fake video, and none of it real. And that's the thing, is that you've got deep fakes and everything getting so good. Sophisticated. There's this term that I heard before, something along the lines of BBT, right? It's a joke, I suppose. People saying, oh, those that are most vulnerable are those called BBTs, born before technology. It's a joke. But there is the issue around, it is those that are a little bit older that are most susceptible to falling prey.
Yes. Well, the flip side of that is it was a Stellenbosch University student that did some research. I think he did his master's, even his PhD on this, and in terms of what kind of people fall prey to these scams. Yeah. And actually, along with the elderly who aren't that tech savvy, are the young arrogants who think they're far too sharp and too clever to ever fall for a scam. And by not having your guard up all the time, by thinking you're invincible, you actually do set yourself up to be vulnerable to these scams. But yes, the elderly like for example, that elderly couple didn't know what AnyDesk was. They didn't realize what they were, downloading and what they were then enabling the fraudster to do. And yes, so and technology, or terminology rather. So the banks might tell you, they'll send you your OTP, your one-time PIN, when you want to make a purchase as authentication. And they'll say there, most of them in that SMS, they'll say, never read out your one-time PIN to someone who calls you, etc., etc. But of course, the fraudsters don't say, when they're calling you up pretending to be from your bank's fraud division and saying, we've got to prevent fraud on your account. They won't say, now you've been sent an SMS, please read out that OTP. They'll use other terminology. They'll say it's a special code to verify that it's you or something like that. And now this person's worked up thinking they're about to lose their life savings or whatever. And so, and these guys are so slick, Naledi. They have call center background noises. And so people do it. And I also wonder sometimes, I think, if the younger people get caught by this, whether they're just too embarrassed to email the likes of me, or they know that I'm not really going to be able to help them. Because, of course, once you even, you're duped into doing it, but once you give what's called the keys to your safe, your passwords, your pins, your one-time pins, the bank is not liable, and the most you can hope for then is that they will give you, if you're a long-term client, as many older people are with a particular bank, they will give you a goodwill gesture of some of your money back, but most of it will unfortunately be gone.
Yeah, and that's interesting because because you make an interesting point around whether or not young people are also getting scammed and simply not reporting it, and that would be data to really look at, I suppose, in the future, right? But I imagine that it would be the elderly that say, that the older that would want to reach out for help. We've got this new thing now with everybody shopping online. I mean, very, very few people or less and less people going into the physical stores. And, with these massive, even fast fashion growing so big globally, some fears around, where I suppose the traps are, where that's concerned.
That's a long story, Naledi, but simply, well, there are different forms of scams with online shoppers. Some are out-and-out scams, and some are just dubious sites that you would do well to steer clear of. So the first thing is for people to normalize going to the URL, that's the website address, and click on that. And it's often with apparel and shoes. You think you're on the genuine site, you Google whatever, Hunter boots, and a fake site will come up, Hunter South Africa, and it'll be a fake site. So you need to, and it will look right. It'll say, or Crocs or Doc Martens or whatever your brand is, and it will look sort of all right, docmartinsa.com or .co or whatever. You need to then go and check whether that is a legitimate website or not, and most of the time you find it's not. And that's just the simplest beginning way to protect yourself, because there are so many scam websites for appliances as well, the trendy ones, the Smigs and all the rest. Just be very careful. The other thing is, if it's clothing or shoes, every size is there available, every color, every variation, and it's on sale, at an excellent price, then and then even just in terms of contacting the site, is there a physical address? If there's a physical address, go into Google Maps and see if it looks like that shop could possibly be there, or if it's just looks completely unlikely. It's so easy now. We can shop in our pajamas at 1 a.m. And the goods are lovely and they're on sale and it's all fantastic, and there's this sort of nice feeling of getting a gift in the courier comes to you. It all feels very nice, but you need to spend literally just 5 minutes before you go to buy and before you give your banking details, and check it out. Become a sleuth, because becoming a sleuth afterwards, when a month has gone by and you haven't got what you bought, is the wrong time. You need to do it beforehand and know what should be there. Like by law in South African retail sites, you need to have an address, a phone number. You can't just have an email address or an embedded email mechanism where you don't even know what their address is, right? That's just being plain silly now in 2025. We can't be letting people dupe us that easily. We need to protect us.
You talk about in the article, your own experiences. And I mean, once you're shopping and there's the excitement I've got this top, it's on its way, I'm really, really excited. There's the moment when you need to, I suppose, get your card out of your wallet and punch in all of those details. Some experience that you've had there that, perhaps there might be a red flag there.
I actually don't know what happened in that case, Naledi. It was just, it was a site that I've bought from before. And for some reason, it wasn't accepting my card, so I tried again, and then my card was blocked, and so I did some inquiries, and I thought, you know what, through work I deal with my bank's head of risk, as a consumer journalist. So I'm just going to leapfrog this whole process and I WhatsApped him, and I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I'll investigate." And he comes back to me, and he's kind of got this very sheepish, slightly embarrassed tone, and he says, and I have to say that was an automatic protection, because by your age, you're considered elderly and a vulnerable person by the bank. And so, and that site you were shopping on, there have been some incidents. And so it was a protective mechanism. And we had a good laugh,
Yeah.
as unfunny as fraud is. But I said, I'm actually quite, I have no problem with being older. We all get our turn, at every age. And I said, I'm actually feel quite consoled by the fact, I mean, I want to be a vulnerable person in terms of my age with my bank. I want them to have extra protective mechanisms. If I can't use my card in that moment and I need to then have it unblocked, brilliant. I love the protection. So the banks are working hard to kind of try and stay ahead of the forces and trying to mitigate some of the stuff to protect us against ourselves, to protect our bank accounts against them. But, if you have someone phone you up and pretending to be from your bank and you believe it without questioning it, there's nothing they can do about that, really.
Yeah.
If you're letting them in, other than warning repeatedly. So my one big piece of advice, lady, and I think there's so much fraud advice, but the one thing I really want people to understand is that if somebody phones you, you don't know who they are, no matter who they say they are, your bank, with your cell phone service provider, whatever, DStv rewards, and they want to give you something like extra rewards, or they want to protect you against fraud, or whatever the case may be, immediately assume that it's a scam, right? Because your banks don't really phone you unless they want to sell you something. I mean, they might send you an SMS asking you, querying, is this you, is this fraud, whatever, but making phone calls, not so much all the time, right?
Yeah.
So assume it's a fraud, end the call, and then don't call them back. Source your bank or your MTN or Vodacom number independently, phone and say, I just want to check. And 9.9 times out of 10, they will say, no, there's no fraudulent activity. Nobody's trying to get hold of you.
Sure.
So anytime anyone wants numbers from you, right?
Right.
Whatever they call them, we just read this out, that code we want. That's because they need that to get into your bank account.
Sure.
So we need to tell our children, the young adults, we need to tell our elders, we need to have these conversations when we socialize and talk about it over and over again. My mother, who's in her 80s, was targeted, and she knew immediately, because what I've jumped into her to say, no, thank you, there's no fraud on my account, thank you, bye. That would save so many people so much financial and emotional angst and despair.
Yeah.
Because if you're elderly, you don't have any means to make more money, right? You've got what you've saved, and that's it, and then it's gone.
Sure. Scary, and it speaks to just how much work we need to be doing in terms of educating ourselves. There's also this, now we've got banking apps on our phones, and there's conversations about all sorts of tips and tricks on how to protect that, right? I immediately think of people that say, don't have the app just openly displayed, put it in a folder somewhere in the phone, all sorts of ideas. But then there's also the technology that's necessary. Some say, upgrading your phone allows for better protection on your app. I mean, explain some of that for us.
Yes. So I do feel badly for some of the older members of our community who grew up in an era where you bought stuff and it lasted. And also, if it is lasting and it's serving my needs, why would I need to spend money on the latest, greatest, shiny thing, right? Which is great. But I had an example of a woman in her late 60s, so not that elderly. You can tell I'm getting on, because what's elderly now sort of shifts out a bit. And she said she had an iPhone 6, right, which is a fairly old phone. But she was getting her emails and doing her banking on her banking app on her phone. And then her bank upgraded its app, and the phone wouldn't, her operating system just wouldn't allow for it. She couldn't upgrade to this operating system required, and the bank just said, sorry for you. She felt they were arrogant. And they said, well, you can do your banking on your laptop or desktop, but, she said, but I like to bank as you go. And
Yeah.
she said, what can be done? And I said, well, I did get a response from the bank, and they said, we're sympathetic. We have put this off for a while because of the fact that we don't want to leave people behind
Yeah.
technologically. But as you said, to answer how you entered the question was security. So a lot of it is not just, we want to do this because an upgrade or for the sake of it, but because the security measures that they want to bring in can only be supported by the latest operating systems, and that's why they do it. But on the other hand, I can understand why somebody like that woman, that 68-year-old, feels annoyed, because now she feels she needs to spend thousands in order to do what she was doing before without any trouble. But as you say, there's the bigger story. There's the security, as well as not the capability for banking itself, but it's to stop people getting into your account. And as I said in that column, one hopes, I think she will relent, because she does like to do her banking on her phone. And let's hope that she also then on that nice new phone doesn't then become, that she upgrades her knowledge about the scam, so that that new phone doesn't then become the conduit, the means through which a fraudster then gains access to her account.
Every time we have these discussions around how to protect consumers from scams, I must say that there's always something new in our discussions, and that's why we really appreciate you making time for us, Wendy, and a great year ahead for you. Thank you so much for your time.